Vince Cable joins me now live from the Liberal Democrat conference in Birmingham. Mr. Cable, thank you for joining us. I would like to talk to you about executive pay, but firstly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the austerity measures in the UK and what's been happening. We had Christine Lagarde from the IMF saying that if conditions deteriorate further, something may need to be done. In your view, is she right, and what would need to be done?
Well, there is a problem of weak demand in the international economy, particularly the Western world, and in the UK. We've had weak retail demand for quite a long time. I mean, we're sticking to our fiscal policy. We are deficit reduction. We have to do that. Crucial to confidence, crucial to Britain's standing, getting interest rates down. There is some scope in monetary policy. I mean, we've been arguing about this over the last few weeks in the UK about clearly interest rates are at rock bottom, but whether there's scope for further quantitative easing. And I think that's where the debate now is.
No, of course, that's independent. The Bank of England is totally independent. Would you like to see them become a little bit more creative in what they can do to stimulate the economy?
Well, they can and they are, and we know there is this debate going on. Of course, when you're getting away from interest rate setting, which obviously and rightly is independent, that's why it was set up in the first place, to stop politicians fiddling with interest rates in the run-up to elections. When you're talking about quantitative easing, you're talking about an area of overlap between monetary and fiscal policy, and government ministers like me, I think, quite legitimately have a point of view on it.
But what is your point of view? Is it time that we saw more quantitative easing? Would you call on the Bank of England to do that?
Well, given the dangers of weakening demand, measures that maintain money supply, particularly if it can be linked to credit, would be an attractive stimulus to have, because we've got very limited scope in fiscal policy.
So is that a yes, that you would like to see more QE?
Yes, I've argued for it, but of course it partly depends on timing, how much and how it's done. And people like Adam Posen on the MPC are putting forward some creative ideas about doing things differently, and I'm rather supportive of what he and others are saying.
And I'd like to talk about banking reform. We've had the Vickers Commission report suggesting that banks should be ring-fenced, and banks in the UK would also have would hold more capital than elsewhere in the world. Indeed, how much of that is down to the Lib Dems and the work that you have done in the coalition?
Well, we certainly pushed very hard for structural reform, but it's a joint project. I set this up with the Chancellor of the Exchequer. We agreed very quickly on who the Commission should be, what its terms of reference were. We have agreed together that its conclusions are right and that we should implement them.
Would it have happened without the Lib Dems being in the coalition?
Well, I like to think that we were a crucial force in pushing this forward, but it was jointly owned by both sides of the coalition, and in order to carry forward such a radical reform, it does need both of us to be committed to it.
Now, what about the 50% tax? There has been a lot of talk about the 50% tax rate and how it is harming the economy. Would you agree that it possibly is harming the economy, and what can be done about it?
No, I don't agree that it's harming the economy at all, but, we've got to be guided by evidence, and the Treasury is carrying out a survey at the moment. I think until recently, the working assumption was that it was bringing in some revenue, even when you take into account the behavioural effects. But yeah, we do need to be guided by evidence. I think from my point of view as Liberal Democrat in the coalition, I do want to see fairness in our tax system. If we can come up with a new idea, a different way of doing it, and we've been advocating the idea of tax levy on very high value property above 2 million as another way of having more equity in the tax system. I'd be very happy to see the 50p phased out.
And I wanted to ask you one question about Europe. Should Greece get this next tranche of money when the money markets clearly feel that they're not going to be able to pay back the money that's been given to them already? Would it be throwing good money after bad?
No, it's really not for British ministers to decide it. We're not members of the Eurozone. We're not aspiring to join it in the near future. It would be quite wrong of me to pass a technical judgment of what they should and shouldn't do. I think it's fairly clear what has to happen to get the Eurozone out of its present mess, and it does involve the write-down of Greek debt. It does involve more liquidity for countries in difficulty. It does involve, Euro bonds. It involves closer coordination, and we in Britain want to see the Eurozone succeed. It's important for our trade. It's important for our banks. But I say we're not part of the Eurozone. and we're not calling the shots on what they do next.
OK. Mr. Cable, thank you very much indeed for joining us.